Hello and welcome back to another episode of ICU. I am your host, Callie, and I'm so excited to do this solo episode today. I am going to tell you exactly what I would do if I were just diagnosed with interstitial cystitis today. As somebody who spent the first 25-ish years of my life struggling with constant bladder pain and even some frequency and urgency during my college years, I have been through it all, you guys. I have seen at least a dozen urologists, urogynecologists, so many different doctors, and I have had lots of different experiences, both positive and negative. And now, fortunately, I am on the other side of this. I have no symptoms for the majority of my days. I usually say I'm about 99% symptom free, because stress is my main trigger and stress cannot be avoided. So that is a work in progress. But I want to give you a rundown of what I would do if I could go back and do it again, knowing what I know now. And I just need to put out this disclaimer. This is not medical advice. This is simply me giving you a rundown of what I would do if I were doing it all over again. So I'm going to take you through a couple of different things, and at the end I'll give you a couple little tips and tidbits, and I really hope that this helps those of you who are new to this diagnosis, because I know that it is scary, it is overwhelming, you don't know where to get your information from, so that is what we are addressing today. So let's dive in. First things first, if you are getting diagnosed with interstitial cystitis, you want to be sure that this diagnosis fits you. Okay, what I want you to ask yourself is, do you trust the doctor who is diagnosing you? Did this doctor do a physical exam? Did they run certain tests and rule out infections? Okay, did they do a cystoscopy on you? It's not 100% necessary to get a diagnosis of IC, or it's not necessary to do a cystoscopy to get a diagnosis of IC if you're living in the US, per the American Urologic Association criteria and recommendations, but it can be helpful to rule a couple of things out, and we will get into that. So it really comes down to, do they seem like they know what they're talking about? Because if they don't, I would recommend going to get a second opinion, because it can't hurt. There are lots and lots of urologists and urogynecologists, and a lot of these practitioners, specifically urologists, they are trained to work with people with prostate issues and different more mainstream conditions like that. And sometimes IC isn't quite on their radar, or they're not up to date on IC research and the guidelines. So, go trust your gut on this. Okay, get a second opinion if you are doubting this diagnosis. Okay, and I actually reviewed the American Urologic Association's guidelines for diagnosing and treating IC before I recorded this episode, and I pulled out a couple different interesting things that I would definitely recommend reviewing the full document. But in terms of the diagnostic process, they say that there should be a basic assessment that should include a careful history, a physical exam, and laboratory examination to document symptoms and signs that characterize IC/BPS, that stands for bladder pain syndrome, and exclude other disorders that could be the cause of the patient's symptoms. Now, what do they mean by other causes? What could be other possible explanations for your symptoms? Well, when doctors are evaluating you, they're going to be looking for a lot of things, okay? They might want to run some tests to make sure you don't have a yeast infection or a sexually transmitted infection or ureaplasma or mycoplasma. There are some vaginal infections. They want to rule out a UTI. They want to, they want to do a physical exam, so they actually look at your vulva area in women, and they might want to, or they don't might want to, but they do want to do a physical exam. So feel your pelvic floor muscles, visualize what everything looks like down there, because they could check you for pelvic floor dysfunction. They could check for vulvodynia. They could check for vaginal atrophy. They also may want to have a conversation with you about your symptoms. So if you're having pain at the same time every month that is related to your period, you could have that conversation about endometriosis. There are certain symptoms that maybe put up a little red flag in their head, and they're like, okay, let's talk about maybe kidney stones or pudendal neuralgia, things like that. And some doctors may want to do a cystoscopy, which is a scope of the bladder. It is not required by the American Urologic Association in order to diagnose interstitial cystitis, but the cystoscopy can be appropriate, and they say that it should be performed in patients for whom Hunner's lesions are suspected. So these are little lesions on the bladder wall that's found in a small percentage of people that do get diagnosed with this condition. And they actually say that men or women over the age of 50 are more likely to have Hunner's lesions on cystoscopy. So it is reasonable to offer cystoscopy to patients over the age of 50. So if you're over the age of 50, your doctor may be more inclined to want to do a cystoscopy. While they do the cystoscopy, they are gonna want to look in your bladder wall to see, is there anything weird going on in here outside of Hunner's lesions? They want to rule out cancer. You know, we all hope that's not what it is, but it can give you the peace of mind that there isn't anything going on in there. And for a lot of us, the doctor will say, oh, well, your bladder wall looks totally normal, or it looks healthy. And this doesn't mean that you don't have interstitial cystitis or painful bladder syndrome, but this can be a really good observation to make. So you don't have Hunner's lesions in this case if your bladder wall looks healthy. Some doctors may want to have you do a hydrodistension procedure where they put you under anesthesia, they blow your bladder up with fluid, and it helps them look at the bladder wall more closely. So if they find Hunner's lesions when they do that, they will treat them, or they should be treating them per the AUA. So that's some of the stuff that your doctors should be ruling out before giving you an IC diagnosis. I've heard from people before, they say, I don't really know if I have IC. My doctor didn't do a physical exam or touch me or look at anything. They just went and diagnosed me with IC based off of my symptoms. And that just, it's not good medical care. And in my opinion, it's pretty lazy. It only takes about 3 to 5 minutes to do an exam where you're looking, you're feeling around. So understand that they should be doing that. And if they're not, that should be a red flag for you. Okay, so after that, we trust the diagnosis. The next thing that I would do is I would make an appointment with a pelvic floor physical therapist right away. Pelvic floor physical therapists are booking out months and months in advance. So I, knowing this information, would get on someone's schedule as soon as I can, because pelvic floor dysfunction is very common to have in people with IC, and it can produce the same symptoms of bladder pain, frequency, urgency, pressure, etc. So this is a top recommendation for people with interstitial cystitis. It has the strongest grade of evidence supporting it, so it is an evidence-based recommendation. If you are thinking, okay, I've never heard of this type of physical therapy, because, most of us haven't, unless you've had a baby or something like that and needed it. But if you're wondering what these visits look like, check out episode 55 of this podcast. I interviewed a pelvic floor physical therapist who takes you through what to expect during your first visit and any follow-up visits. But your pelvic floor essentially is a hammock type muscle structure that's holding up your internal organs. And if your muscles are too tight or they're not functioning properly, that could indicate you have pelvic floor dysfunction. Now, this, for me personally, going to pelvic floor PT was so incredibly helpful. I've actually seen 5 different pelvic PTs over the course of the last decade, and every single one of them has been so different, which I think there's definitely, a benefit from seeing all of them. The other thing that really helped me with my pelvic floor dysfunction was using a pelvic wand every day. So there's pelvic wands and pelvic dilators that can help you. They can be a tool that you can use outside of physical therapy to kind of stretch your muscles and work out any sort of trigger points that you have while you're not in the physical office with your pelvic floor PT. So these things were really incredibly helpful for me, and they've been so helpful for the majority of my clients. And yeah, I'd say don't knock it till you try it, but definitely get on somebody's wait list or just make an appointment with someone. But also be careful with who you're scheduling with. Not every pelvic floor PT is proficient in treating IC patients, so don't be afraid to call the office, ask them some questions. Do you work with a lot of IC patients? What do your methods look like? Don't be afraid to ask questions. So that is the second thing that I would do. The third thing that I would do revolves around mindset. It's really easy to get this diagnosis and think that your life is over. And I get it, because I did think my life was over when I was diagnosed at 18. The doctor told me, this is going to be something that you're going to struggle with forever, essentially. There's no cure. Treatments are not guaranteed to work. So you're going to need to just learn to live with it, essentially, is what they told me. So it took me a couple of years to work through my feelings and my mindset towards my bladder symptoms. And eventually I got to a point where, I recognized that if I don't believe I'm going to get better, I'm not. And so I started working on daily affirmations, telling myself that you can and you will get relief. And I started working on a lot of other things that had to do with my lifestyle and my diet. And I did a lot of work behind the scenes in addition to working on my mindset. And once I started to implement certain interventions and I would see, a little bit of relief, that helped reinforce this mindset of, I do believe I'll get relief. So you're allowed to throw yourself a pity party. That is a total normal human reaction. And I just would caution you about the length of that pity party. You don't want it to go too long. Mine ended up being 2 years, and I really wasted a lot of time that I could be getting relief. So let this be your sign. You listening to me say this right now. You need to start to believe, if you don't already, that you can and you will get relief from your IC symptoms. Okay, and I'll tell you how you can work through that and how you can figure that all out. But the mindset component is huge. Again, if you don't believe you can get relief, you won't. Same thing with interventions, like medical treatment options. There's science and research behind, or there's certain science and evidence that shows if you believe an intervention will help you, it has a higher chance of it actually helping you. So let me just plant that seed for you, and you can let that grow over time. The fourth thing that I would do after being diagnosed with IC is I would start educating myself. Knowledge is power. The more you know about the different triggers for IC, the different treatment options that are available to you, as much knowledge as you can get, this is going to help you make more informed decisions for your health. It's going to help you advocate for yourself confidently, and it's going to empower you. Okay, it's a really great thing to feel empowered when you're dealing with a chronic condition that can make you feel out of control a lot. So in terms of education, finding evidence-based information can be difficult. There are a lot of avenues out there that you can learn from. I did an episode back in season 3 with Laura Santuri, and we discussed how to find evidence-based information. So I would highly recommend checking that out. I know that talking about research isn't the sexiest topic, but it can help you filter through what is evidence-based versus what is a health claim, what is not backed up by science, because we want to be doing the interventions that are evidence-based, that have been studied, and are proven to give you a higher chance of getting relief. Okay? So I would definitely work on gaining as much knowledge as possible. There's lots of books out there too. Nicole Cozine, who also was on the show last season, she wrote a book called The IC Solution. That one's fantastic. There's lots of different things out there that you can learn from. Okay, next thing, this is kind of a bigger overarching theme or a recommendation that I make every single day, and I feel like a broken record, but you need to start investigating your root cause. You need to understand that there is something that's causing your bladder symptoms, and you need to figure out what that is, first of all, and you need to address or treat that. Okay, so the top 2 root causes among my clients are pelvic floor dysfunction and nervous system dysregulation. Now, I did a full episode on how to find your root cause on episode 78, and that I would definitely recommend going to listen to that one if you have not already after you're done with this episode. But really, you need to actually address what's at the root of the problem rather than continuing to treat the symptoms through interventions like medication, supplements, invasive treatments, diets, detoxes, whatever that may be. So go listen to episode 78. The next thing is diet. We got to talk about diet because the IC diet is such a popular or hot topic in our community. And in my experience personally, when I was diagnosed, I was given this pamphlet that was the IC diet, and my doctor was like, okay, follow this. Good luck. And it literally tells you to not eat and drink coffee, alcohol, citrus, tomatoes, chocolate, like literally everything in my life that I enjoyed at that time, I was told not to consume anymore. And this was a long-term thing. And that, the emotional and mental toll that took on me was crazy. I don't think doctors realize just how much this affects us physically, mentally, emotionally, and socially. Our lives revolve around food. Any social situation you go to, there is food there, or there's drinks. So it can be really tough to navigate. And the thing is, the IC diet does not have strong research behind it. Okay, and I have worked with just about 200 IC warriors at this point in time. And the majority of my clients are not diet sensitive. And many of them came to me thinking that they were because their doctors told them that they were. And through an investigative process, we determined that they are not. Their root cause was something not diet related at all. And they're like, oh my goodness, I wish I didn't spend the past 2 years following the IC diet. I have lots of clients coming to me doing like gluten-free, low histamine, low oxalate, like all of these diets out here. And it's like, there's no research supporting them for IC. Now, I get that we can get desperate and food is something that we can feel in control of. So it can give you this sense of control. But I am telling you right now, the majority of people that I work with are not diet sensitive. For the people who are, the small subset of people who are diet sensitive, This is usually a symptom secondary to another issue. So what that means is there is some other root cause occurring that once they address, they will not only get symptom relief, they will also notice that diet sensitivity completely disappear. I've seen it in dozens of my clients, and it is possible for you if you have deemed that you are diet sensitive. Okay, and how you can determine that is by doing an elimination diet. That is a long explanation. I did an overview of it back in episode 17, but it's a bit outdated. And recently, among my clients, we're having them prioritize regulating their nervous system before jumping into doing an elimination diet, because if your nervous system is stuck in a state of fight or flight, it perceives some sort of threat. And a lot of us, we think that, or our brain has associated food, like the foods that aren't recommended for people with IC, we see these foods as dangerous. We label them in our head as, this is a bad food for me. And you're essentially making that into a threat without even realizing it. I mean, this is a subconscious thing. And it doesn't help when our doctors are telling us, follow the IC diet, follow the IC diet. And this is just something that I could talk about for hours and hours and hours. But my best advice to you would be, don't assume you're diet sensitive, okay? Investigate your root cause. You can follow the IC diet in the beginning, because if your symptoms are flared up, your bladder wall is angry, and you don't want to throw fuel on the fire, okay? So it can be appropriate to follow the IC diet for a short period of time. Let's say you could follow it 4 to 6 weeks. But the problem that I see is people just assuming that they need to be on this forever, and they really don't. Maybe they have intentions of adding foods back in, but sometimes the fear just becomes too much. And some risks of following the IC diet long term include developing nutrient deficiencies because you're not eating a variety of food anymore. Your diet isn't as diverse. The second thing is unintentional weight loss. So if you're eating less food, whether that's from fear or some other reason, you have less nutrients going in your body, less calories, you're losing weight, whether that be intentional or unintentional. And then the third thing, and this is super, super common, is the development of food fear. And this plays into our stress response, and it keeps a lot of you in a state of chronic stress, which is not going to promote healing in the body. So to sum that up, understand that the IC diet is not meant to be a long-term solution. Find your root cause, address it, do an elimination diet after that, and you most likely won't be diet sensitive. But if you need to follow it for a short period of time, that's totally fine too. That actually can decrease inflammation in your body, especially if things are really irritated, and it can just soothe the bladder because you're not, throwing different irritants at it, essentially. So that is what I will say about diet. In terms of hydration, you need to be hydrated. If your urine is if you're dehydrated, your urine will be more concentrated. So when you're dehydrated, you look at your urine color, it's most likely like a dark yellow. We want it to be more of a light yellow or a little bit towards clear, but we don't want it to be crystal clear because that means you're overhydrated. So you can definitely monitor your hydration level through your urine color. There's charts on the internet that you can look at, but generally I tell my clients, shoot for 64 ounces. If you go over that, amazing. If you are falling very short of that, then we need to have a conversation about how to increase fluids. But a lot of people assume that if you drink less, you'll pee less. And that's just not the case. It actually can cause you to have to pee more or increase your bladder symptoms. So, hydrate. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, if I were just diagnosed with IC, I would want to find support. Because when I went through my diagnosis, the first 20 years of my life, I'll say, I had no support. I knew nobody in my life who had IC or just a bladder issue in general. You know, I wasn't talking about it freely, but I just had never met anybody that had bladder pain or any other bladder issues. So I felt really alone. I felt really isolated. And that was not a fun feeling, especially as a kid growing up. I wondered, you know, what's wrong with me? I did get diagnosed at 18, but for the first 18 or so years of my life, I was like, what the heck is going on here? I know something isn't right, but no doctor was able to help me. So my point is that a lot of you, this will be the first time you're hearing of interstitial cystitis. It can be a lot to grasp at first. And for most of you probably, you also don't know anybody in your life with IC. Your partner, your kids, your parents, your friends, you know, people in your life, as much as they love you, because I'm sure they do, they are never going to understand what you go through on a day-to-day basis. That is just the simple truth. And my suggestion would be to surround yourself with support that would ideally be somebody that has IC, but also make sure that there's somebody who is positive, who believes that they can and you can get relief and can validate what you're going through. It can be a really comforting feeling to talk to another human wherever they live on this planet who can say like, yeah, oh my gosh, I also have that symptom, or, you know, it just can relate to you on a deeper level. It's really great. There are various support groups for IC on Facebook. I want to caution you guys, there can be a lot of really good info on there, but there can be a lot of gloom and doom, people who don't believe they can get relief, and lately I've been seeing a lot of misinformation, so I would just be careful, take what people say with a grain of salt, always do your own research, talk to your doctor, all the things. And another side note, I would avoid Reddit. As somebody who has relief and does check in on the IC Reddit thread every once in a while, it can get dark in there. And I see a lot of misinformation in there. So that one, it does give me some anxiety. It does make me feel a negative way. So I usually only pop in there once or twice a month just to see what's going on. But, you know, if you're in a vulnerable mental state and you're feeling overwhelmed, I would maybe not get on these groups quite yet. Okay, so we talked about a lot here. You know, we talked about verifying or trusting your diagnosis. We talked about getting in to see a pelvic floor physical therapist, working on your mindset, educating yourself, addressing your diet, and getting support. Now, if you want something that can put all of these elements together, that is exactly why I created my Road to Remission program. We can help you with all of these things, okay? We take a holistic approach that combines education, nutrition, mindset work, finding your root cause, and support. We have all of this included in the program. And that's because I wanted to give people the tools that I didn't have the first time around for me. Okay, so what we're doing is we're aiming to find and address your root cause to get you long-term relief rather than just continuing to treat the symptoms for short-term relief. And this program, we've worked with about 200 clients as of this recording, and the majority of our clients are getting significant symptom relief and maybe even going into remission within 3 to 6 months of working with us. So this can be an opportunity for you to really speed up the process or the timeline of you getting relief. We're putting everything that you need in one spot, and you're going to get personalized coaching from my team to help you every step of the way. Okay, so we have one-on-one calls in the program, but we also have group coaching calls where everyone in the program is invited, and we have 2 of these each week. This is where you can come and get personalized coaching face-to-face. We do a Zoom call. This is where you can get your questions answered. This is where you can connect with other IC warriors face-to-face. It is so comforting to know that you are not alone on your journey. And most of our clients absolutely adore everybody in this program, and they love the group calls because it is a really comforting vibe, and everybody is so positive and so encouraging. We also have an extensive education component to the program. We have a ton of learning opportunities for you. Anything from, finding your root cause to we have a full nervous system series put together by a nervous system therapist. We have a pelvic health module that goes into healthy bladder habits, how to use a pelvic wand, bladder training, things like that. We have a lot of nutrition classes to teach you about the basics, and we have classes on how to overcome food fear, things you should know about your gut health and how that can relate to your bladder. We have a ton of stuff on there that can help you feel informed and feel empowered on your journey. So we are currently accepting new clients inside of Road to Remission. We are ready to help you get relief in the next 3 to 6 months through finding and addressing your root cause. So if you're interested, you can apply at the link in the show notes, and we would be happy to help you on your journey. A final note that I wanted to say before I wrap this up is that what you need to understand is that doctors have been trained medically. They have medical options that they can offer you. And when it comes to IC, there is no one treatment that works for everybody. So treatments are going to be experimental. Relief is not guaranteed. So doctors may offer you treatments like instillations, hydrodistension. They may offer you Botox injections. There are various medications they may want to start you on. And some of these interventions I'm talking about can be invasive and can come with some risky side effects. So I wanted to let you know, these aren't treatments that you have to do at first. This is something I didn't know when I was 18, new to this. I thought, okay, my doctor's recommending it, I'm going to do it. And next thing you know, I'm taking 3 different medications. I'm doing installations each week. We're talking about Botox, and it just was all very overwhelming. And for me, medical treatments never helped. So I wanted to let you know, if that's the avenue you want to go, that's totally fine. No judgment. But I want you to know that there are many non-invasive and less risky things that you can do first before getting into the riskier interventions. So things like hydrating, things like wearing loose pants that aren't constricting your pelvic floor, avoiding bladder irritants temporarily. Again, you can do an elimination diet in the future, but understand that you may not be diet sensitive. Also, address your stress. This is the number one trigger among everyone that I've worked with. So whether that's going to therapy, whether that's adding meditation into your day, finding something that works for you is going to really help. Next is take what you see on Facebook support groups or other platforms with a grain of salt. If something sounds like a health claim to you, like you should do X, Y, or Z, and there's no source or citation, you can respectfully ask for that so that you can make an informed decision with that information. Also, understand that supplements won't solve all of your problems. I see a lot of chatter in support groups about different supplements that are on the market, and the thing is, these supplements most likely are not going to solve all of your problems. They're not going to cure you of this condition. If they do, that's fantastic, and I love that for you, but in reality, they most likely are not going to. And also, supplements are not regulated by the FDA, so just be careful. Do your research. And lastly, relief. The time that it takes you to get relief is going to be different for everybody. Some people that I work with, they get relief within a few days to a few weeks. Okay. Some people, it takes 3 months, 6 months, a year. You need to set realistic expectations. It really depends on what your root cause is and how much work you're putting in behind the scenes to address what that is. So again, if you need help, just reach out to me. If you're ready to jump into road to remission and get a higher level of support and guidance from someone who has been through it, and you want to join a community of 200 women across the world, we are ready to help you in road to remission. Just apply at the link in the show notes. And thanks for being here with me today. I hope this helps those of you who are starting out on your IC journey. I hope this helps you feel hopeful, and I hope that it gives you the confidence to start implementing some of these interventions that I've been talking about. So thanks for hanging out with me.